Hi everyone, I'm here to talk about MLA, Modern Language Association, both formatting and documentation. And formatting has to do with the way you type up your document, so we know that it's in MLA format, and documentation has to do with in-text citations and works cited entries. And y'all, MLA is my least favorite thing to teach. Oh my gosh, look at that face. It's not my fave. I would rather talk about the rhetorical situation or genres or multimodality, anything else. So I'm going to do this so fast, so please be ready to pause or to rewind. Is that even like a thing with videos? That's like VCR talk from when I was a teenager. But anyhow, I'm going to talk fast because I want to make this quick, and I know you can pause and replay stuff and take notes and all of that. And I'll post this file. You notice that I've typed part of Cameron Howard's essay into a document, and that's because he didn't include in-text citations, so I'm going to show you where they should go, and then we'll go over some works cited entries. All right, let's start with formatting. So if I'm Cameron, I'm going to have a heading, and that's my name, my professor's name, my course, and the date. Notice the date is inverted, you all, 13 February 2022. Notice there's a header up here. How did I do this header? I went to page number. I went at the top of the page. I chose that the number should be on the right-hand side, and then I put a space, and then you'll type your name so that there's your last name and the space, and then I'm going to double-click outside there, and you notice when I scroll down to page 2, it says Howard 2. And again, how did I get into this header? I double-clicked. You know, you can use some of the other ways of getting to the header, but I like to double-click because it's pretty fast. All right, so other stuff. Title is centered. Paragraphs are double-spaced. First line of each paragraph is indented 5 spaces. You have 1-inch margins, which is the default in Microsoft, and I think also the default in Google. And I only typed the first 3 paragraphs, but you can see we're going to go over the in-text citations. I highlighted in yellow where those in-text citations should go. So I think that's all the formatting stuff, with the exception that the works cited page should be its own page. So I'll just scroll down and show that to you really quick, and then we'll go down and look at the works cited entries later on. Again, good thing that you're using that header, because notice it's page 3 and your works cited page should be its own separate page. I did add some comments on the side over here. You all aren't going to have comments. I put those there to help us look at in-text citations. So that's the formatting stuff. Let's talk about the documentation. We're going to start with in-text citations. And in-text citations, IN-TEXT space, and then the word citation, CITATION. They sort of work like footnotes, y'all. You ever seen a text with like a little 1 hovering above the word, or a number 2 hovering above the word? So they kind of work like those footnotes, but they're this goofy little thing inside parentheses, and that's what an in-text citation is. It's page numbers, or paragraph numbers, or author last name, or shortened article title, or website title inside parentheses. You can see that I've inserted them there. Let's look at the first paragraph. No in-text citations necessary here. It's all Cameron Howard talking about his connection to Christoph, the author of Fleeing to the Mountains, and so it's all just like a little anecdote, and we do have an identification of the kind of essay that Fleeing to the Mountains is, but there's no use of the source. There's no direct quote, there's no paraphrase, there's no summary, so no in-text citation in this paragraph. I'm going to move my image over to the side a little bit. You notice that my comment here identifies that there is summary of the primary source in this paragraph, and it pretty much starts from the beginning. We have Christoph's article, and then it starts, you know, it identifies what kind of rhetoric the piece is using, and then from there on just summarizes the essay with a couple of quotes here to really highlight some special language that Cameron wanted to show us. So what I did with this summary of the primary source is I put my in-text citation at the very end where the summary ends. And we're going to have some options with the in-text citations that I'll cover in a minute. So you're going to see some different stuff in here, and then I'll tell you what those options are in a few moments. But let me finish showing you where else the in-text citations need to go so that you can find where your in-text citations need to go. So definitely after the summary of the primary source. And then in body paragraphs, this is the last paragraph that I typed up from Cameron's essay, but in body paragraphs, you're probably either going to paraphrase or directly quote. And that's happening in the third paragraph of Cameron's essay. You notice There's some paraphrasing here at the beginning, so I put in text citation there. And then we have this really creative use of quotation where Cameron identifies some style and then puts the examples of that specific style inside parentheses, and then in quotes the examples inside parentheses. And so notice that I put the in-text citation after both of those examples. And then if you scroll down a little bit more, there is actually some summary at the end of what Christoph is saying at the end of the narrative part of the essay. So I have an in-text citation there. Again, reminder, I'm going to give you some variation on how to do in-text citation. So that's why I have some options here. I have paragraph numbers, I have an italicized website title, and I have a shortened title of the essay or the article. Fleeing to the Mountains, remember, as 4 words, and I want my in-text citations to be as small as possible. So let's talk about, we've talked about where the summary is, where the paraphrasing is, where the direct quoting is, where the in-text citations are going, and notice in each of those instances, the in-text citations are going after the source, after the summary ends, after the paraphrase ends. I technically could, you see this, there's some yellow here, I could have put another in-text citation there, but it was so bothersome to me that I had all these parentheses that I just decided to put it at the end. Y'all, because that's a really unique use of the direct quotes, and you don't see that very often. Like usually the quotes would not be put in parentheses like that. And then at the end of this summary. So we've talked about location of in-text citations, why they're being used, because every time you use a source, whether it's a primary source or a secondary source, you must have an in-text citation. When you summarize, you must have an in-text citation. When you paraphrase, you must have an in-text citation when you quote. All right? If it's common knowledge, general knowledge, there's no source needed for that. But when I'm using a source and I put it into my own words with paraphrasing and summarizing, some people think, well, it's in my own words, I shouldn't have to cite it. But you do. I just said the verb cited, C-I-T-E, and then the noun I-T, or the pronoun I-T. Anytime you use a source, you must cite it with an in-text citation. Cite coming from citation. Let's talk about the options here. So, some of you may have learned for in-text citations for MLA format that you should use for a web source, and that's what we're using here, you all. I looked up Christoph's essay on the New York Times. You can see it right here. I'm pretending I'm using the web source, not the, sorry, I went too far. The web source, not the one in the textbook. And I'm doing that because I'm assuming most of your secondary sources are web sources. So let's just talk about web source in-text citations, not book in-text citations, not database in-text citations, just web sources. So you have some options. You may have learned paragraph numbers. So if you want to use paragraph numbers, use paragraph numbers. It's pretty simple. You notice you abbreviate the word paragraph and you put the paragraph number. So for these 2 quotes and this summary at the end, I have the paragraph numbers. But if you don't want to use paragraph numbers, you have some other options. You can use the author's last name, a shortened version of the article title, and that's this example right here. Fleeing to the mountains became just fleeing, with quotation marks, and then they're inside parentheses. Or you can use an italicized website title. How do you know which one to use? You're saying, Beth, you just said I could use author last name, shortened version of the article title, or website title. It has to do with the way you're weaving your source information into your paragraphs. If you mention the author's name, you see it here, we see it here, we see it here. I'm not going to use the author's last name because I've named the author so many times. I don't want to repeat that in the in-text citation. So I chose the shortened version of the article title. In this part of the essay, we have both author name and the name of the article. So because I don't want to repeat author name and shortened version of the article title, I use the website address right here in italics. All right, so the options are use paragraph numbers. If that's easier for you, count your paragraphs. It is pretty simple and straightforward. But if you don't want to do paragraph numbers, you can use author last name, article title, shortened with quotation marks inside parentheses, or website title, italicized inside the parentheses. Either thing works for me. All right, so let's scroll down and go over the works cited entries. I'll try to go over them quickly. Okay, so at the top of my works cited page, y'all, I have copied and pasted from probably the most commonly used website on MLA format and documentation, from the Purdue University Online Writing Lab, the Purdue OWL, and you've probably heard other instructors and teachers talk about this. So I went to the web page. I'll put it in our D2L shell so you can look at this information as well. But I copied and pasted in from the Purdue OWL the recommendation on a website source works cited entry. And there's lots of stuff that you won't find on your websites. My cat just startled me because I'm giving a video and she doesn't want me to give the video anymore because the cat rules my life, right? Anyhow, the recommendation for the information, you won't find it all. Okay, you're not going to find the number or the version or any of this stuff. So you see in yellow, I've highlighted what you'll mostly find and what most website works cited entries consist of. So let's look at an example. Here is the example, Fleeing to the Mountains from the New York Times. So you can definitely apply this to the Atlantic article that you're using. And I actually did an example article from the Atlantic below, but I won't show you the website. So I have last name, comma, first name of the author, period. I have article title, the full title with a period inside quotation marks. So the punctuation is really important to get right, so that's why I'm pointing it out. Then I go into what's known as the container, but it's just the website or the book, or in this case, it's the website, okay? The New York Times is in italics. That's the name of the magazine. And then I need the publisher information. And so that's at the very bottom of the website, y'all. Let me show you real quick. I'm going to scroll down to the bottom, and you'll find the publisher information next to the copyright date, okay? So you see the copyright date, and then you should look for the publisher information there. So all I did was copy that in, and then I'm going to scroll back to the top and show you that I'm not going to use the copyright date. I'm going to use the date that this article was published online, which is underneath Christoph's picture there. So let's go back to the works cited page so you can see what I did. So this is the New York Times, title of the website, comma, publisher information, comma, and then the date the article was published, 12 August 2017. Notice it's inverted again. Then we're going to do the URL. So I just copy and pasted that from the website. I removed the hyperlink, so I am going to make some adjustments before I turn my essay in on February 13th. I'm going to move some of that HTTPS and probably down to like 2017. It'll allow me to cut my URL in half so I don't have that big gap right here. But you have to take the URL hyperlink out to do that. Otherwise, Word will keep moving you to the website every time you try to click on it and move it around. And then the last part is this access date. Notice that I put last week's date. I have an extra 1 in there, so let me take that out. I don't need to see the access date, y'all. Here's why. The Purdue OWL says date of access if applicable. Not applicable if I have the publishing date right here. So you can either do it with both dates or with just one date. And if you can't find a copyright date and there's no publishing date available on your web source, then you would definitely put the access date, because we need some reference to the date so we know when the source was either published or located by you online. And then very quickly, you'll notice that I have an example from the Atlantic magazine, so you can fill in your author and your article title and the correct date and the correct URL. But you're going to have the same italicized title and the same publisher information there. And then you'll have to do web sources for your secondary source. I've given you 2 examples here, sharing this in the video, and I'll also share the file in D2L so that you can look at the examples. I'll also, when I post the video, give page numbers where you can look up MLA info in your textbook, either in your 8th edition or your 9th edition of the textbook. And I think that's all. Y'all, so sorry this took so long. It just takes a long time to talk about MLA. But gosh, if I'm, at 12 minutes, 13 minutes, and this is my full presentation of all the MLA stuff for the rhetorical analysis, that's pretty darn good. Okay, let me know if you have questions. And I'm happy to help you with your MLA stuff. I know it's kind of confusing and the rules are silly, but I know you can do right by your sources and ethically document all those sources with your in-text citations and your works cited page. See you later.